Hello and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is session 2, panel 2 on the Building Bridges Power Panel Series. The first session, the first discussion was around personal power. This discussion, session 2, is around social power, being able to mobilize yourself, growing. Human beings are social creatures, so that means we need to figure out how we move, mix, and mingle with everybody else, even if you're an introvert. As a lot of people are. And again, as we go into today's discussion, I think that's part of it. How do you figure out what type of person you are and then move into these spaces to really leverage your skill set, your attitude, your mindset? So I'm just getting excited. So before I got to slow myself down, the housekeeping, only myself and the panelists will be highlighted. So only our faces will be on the screens this evening. Everybody has access to the chats. So if you want to go ahead throughout the evening or when we get to the tail end and we're doing the Q&A, please use the chat features. Myself and the panelists will do our best to answer the questions and I'll read them out as well. Pausing right now because we have to do our ancestral as well as the land acknowledgement. So first and foremost, it's always important, especially for the culture, to give thanks to those who came before us, not just in terms of, our people, indigenous people of African descent in Nova Scotia, but also the 1,000 years of history and of lineage that we do have, in terms of the greatness, the history, the education, building civilizations, but the challenges that our ancestors have endured, on this unceded territory that's specifically in Mi'kma'ki. And it is also important to pay homage to that, specifically that this is unceded territory and we are all treaty peoples. So it doesn't matter, even if you are in a different province, it might not be of the Mi'kmaq First Nation, but you are on land that has been unceded. And so we are all treaty people, which means we have a duty of care to mix, mingle, and be respectful to everyone we come in contact with. And that is also aligned with the values that we're looking to discuss tonight and really dive into. So before I do too much of that, like I said, I'm getting excited. I'm so excited to have our panelists this evening. So if I could start it off by giving just a brief introduction before I pass it over to each of our panelists. Then they're going to give a self-introduction. We're going to hop into roundtable discussions. Got a few questions prepared. Well, hopefully they'll each dive in popcorn style. Then we'll tailor it into, some words to live by and end in a Q&A. This is being recorded. It's also being live streamed. We're going to check the feed as well. So there will be some of this that we're going to distribute to the youth and some of the students in their classes that can't attend, as well as some practitioners specifically that deal with youth. So first and foremost, if I may, Mr. Shaquille Smith, I would love to welcome you to the panel. Thank you so much for joining us. Shaq,
happy to be here,
is a leader in so many ways, a professional. He is in industry, a marketing professional, social professional, as I would like to say, but also an elite athlete. And so that is something that I would love to and look forward to diving into as well, because he's someone that has for the most of his life worn many hats. And being able to balance as a professional, as an athlete, is something, especially within our culture, that we hold close, hold high, and is also a different standard. So thank you so much, Shaq, for joining us. If I could move on, pass it over to Miss Chevy Price. It has been a minute, long overdue. I'm excited to have you here, especially with the pandemic. Now it's not a physical panel. We got the virtual setup. But Ms. Chevy Price, again, is wearing many hats as an entrepreneur, a change maker, a leader in, the creative space, specifically as an artist, getting into different scenes. So I'm not even going to give a genre because it's all about creating. And that's something that, you continue to, just like Shaq, highlight that you can wear many hats, you can hold your own in many spaces and do it consistently. So I look forward to diving in that. Thank you so much, Chevy, for joining us. Next, if we could go over to Miss Dena Williams, again, wearing many hats, don't know where to start, entrepreneur, big into the artistry scene, into the creative space, getting into artist management as well. But then I know you have the social work lens as well as the community mind. So you have a lot of things that I'm looking forward to really diving in and discussing as you've navigated multiple universities as well as being rooted in community. So thank you so much, Dena, for joining us. And last but not least, I think everybody's familiar with the face, especially as the video released, Miss Chanae Parsons, a community youth advocate, leader, public speaker, you know, wearing many hats, but you know, at the forefront, I really would like to say an educator through and through. You know, doesn't matter which hats you wear, you're always bringing the education, the knowledge, and the learning, especially as you're transitioning and dealing with adults, you know, in a larger degree. So I'm very grateful that you're here and you can speak on so many different levels, how people can mobilize and what networks and the importance of those things are in your life as you grow and mature. So thank you all so much for joining us. I'd like to now pass it over to that part of the intro, the self-intro, self-pitch, you know, the who you are, what you're up to. So if I could almost start, and Shaq, if I could pass it over to you to kick us off, please. And then once you go, feel free to pass it on to who's next.
Yes, sir. So my name's Shaquille Smith. I'm from North Preston, Nova Scotia. Former athlete. I played basketball for Acadia for 5 years. And then I ended up graduating, getting into digital marketing. And then after my time in digital marketing, now I'm a recruiter. So I work for a headhunting firm here in Halifax, but I still basically headhunt for digital marketing roles, you know, sales roles, nonprofit roles, things of that nature. In terms of like my background, I felt like people know me as the basketball court guy, you know, just because of the project that I led in the community over the past couple of years in North Preston and fundraising money to rebuild the basketball court. But you know, like Andreas said, you know, I wear many hats. You know, I got a digital marketing background. You know, I founded my own nonprofit organization called the Futures Program. That's basically, you know, helping student athletes prepare for life after sports, primarily in basketball. And now I have, you know, a recruiting background. So you know, starting to make a little bit of headway in the HR space and recruitment. And, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted to jump into recruitment spaces, you know, to have a kind of a say at the table or a presence when we're hiring, especially for like diversity type roles, leadership roles, so on and so forth. So, you know, wide range of interests and skills, but they range from marketing to community builder to now recruitment. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here, and I'm gonna pass it over to Chevy Price.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. First and foremost, when you're doing those introductions, I was trying not to clap the whole time. So if I looked funny, that was why. So people know me as a local rapper. I have a gold plaque with the country Canadian star Dean Brody. I was also the first Black female rapper on the Canadian Country Music Awards. So that kind of is following me around a bit. I'm currently on vocal rest though, so I will not be making any new music until the end of this year. I've been working on my degree. I'm attending Dalhousie right now for sociology and business. I work for a national government organization called Taking It Global. And with our initiative, Rising Youth, we give grants away to youth across Canada to do community impact projects. My job covers 6.5 provinces, and I get to just be with youth, help them impact their communities, and make sure they have a good experience with funding, because we all know it's not fun. So that's what I've been up to. And I'm also a mom to a almost 5-year-old, so that's keeping me busy during the pandemic. And I'm going to hand it over to Dena.
Thanks, Chevy. Hey everyone, my name is Dena Williams. Born and raised in Halifax, but I come from the Preston communities east and north. I'm a creative entrepreneur. I'm currently a student at Dalhousie University. Graduated from Acadia University back in 2018. I do many things within the creative arts industry. I'm currently executive member on the board of Music Nova Scotia. I'm very excited about that partnership. Just got into writing a little bit, so actually creating myself, you know, trying to create opportunities for other creatives. When you're a creative person, you kind of forget that you love to create yourself. So I'm kind of getting back into the creative space myself. I'm really excited to be here. Community advocacy is a huge thing for me in the social work realm of things. I'm excited to incorporate that into my business, Vitamin D Entertainment, bringing arts to the community and helping people, you know, express themselves and really show what their communities are about to the larger world through their art. So that's a little bit about me and what I'm really excited about, and I'm happy to be here. Chanae, what's going on?
Sorry, I didn't see the unmute button come up, but thank you so much. I don't know if I can top how Andreas introduced me, but my name is Chanae Parsons. I am first and foremost a mother to a beautiful 4-year-old son. I am an African Nova Scotian woman who hails from the Black heritage settlement of Lucasville. I also went to Dalhousie University and completed my social work degree. So I am a registered social worker, and I do pro bono work through the Association of Black Social Workers. I'm also a returning student, so I'm pursuing my master's of adult education with a focus on women's leadership as well as community development through St. FX University. And I'm currently employed as the manager of community engagement and programming with the Halifax Public Libraries for the Eastern District. So I oversee 6 different branches in the programming that they put forward. One specifically is the new East Preston office that will be opening shortly. It won't be a full-blown branch, but it will be more so like an office. About myself, I also am a part of various advisory boards, committees across the province. Some of them are provincial boards and others are local, like the Avalon Sexual Assault Center, Association of Black Social Workers, African Nova Scotia Innovation Lab, various advisory roles, but I also do some consulting on the side. So I do a lot of training and educational workshops specifically for youth or teachers or educators around the topic specifically youth engagement, Black history, systemic racism, allyship, you name it, I got it. I also co-founded an organization alongside Shaquille that he didn't mention, which was ACE. So Arts, Culture, Community, and Economics. So we are co-founders of that organization. And the cool thing about that organization is that we're self-funded. So it's our own money that is going into the pot to create programming and experiences and opportunities for African Nova Scotian or people of African descent across the province. That's me.
Well, thank you each for the voices, and in a very much so want to just give a big welcome as well, because all of the elements that you've touched on already highlight all the opportunities that you've already been presented with, but able to achieve, right? And I think that's something that, as we dive into discussion tonight, I really want to look at, right? A very big part, just to even start the conversation here, a very big part for me of grounding belief is that every individual is a business. You know, especially us as young professionals coming into this digital era, we have to understand that we're already investing daily. We have assets, we have liabilities, especially once we start families. And there's things that we have to put into. At the same point, we're all each our own brands, but maybe we don't think about it until we get older. And this is something that each of you have already, you know, successfully built your own brands, and you've used that, you've leveraged that. And as that kind of first piece of the conversation, where we just start off, you know, being able to leverage your brand, looking at your lived experience. And again, whoever wants to dive in first, but looking at your lived experience along your journey, when did you begin to realize that building a network was important? When did you start to, or even if it was buzzwords, you know, people hearing and saying, you know, networks are important. So I just want to even start it there as a point.
So I can jump in on that. I can identify the very actual instance. I talk about it a little bit in the article that I had just been featured in. And it was the instance when I met Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard in university, and she introduced me to a tactic and told me that this is something that you're going to need to practice and employ. And she told me about the importance of identifying community champions. And she meant that not necessarily somebody who is well known, but the individuals that are going to support the work it is that you're doing specifically. And I've used that practice ever since my first year of university. And so when I'm entering into new spaces and places, I always try to identify the champions within that organization, or the champions within the school that I'm working with, or the champions within my inner networks. So when I'm thinking about, specific projects and things like that, I'll just take it back to program development. So, Dena, for example, recognizing that she's an event manager. So using and leveraging her skill set to support the development of my projects, I've been able to employ that same model in various different ways, in different opportunities, and in different spaces and institutions as well. So it's looking beyond the community, but also looking at the individuals who can champion that work. And how you go about doing that is developing relationships with these individuals. So yeah, I'll pause there and let somebody else jump in.
Yeah, I can go next. Similar to Chanae, I can remember the exact instance where I realized I needed a network. And that would have been as I transitioned from an athlete to trying to figure out my life in the personal career, in the career world. When you're an athlete for so long, and for me, I played basketball my whole life. So, if you think about my path, when I graduate university, I'm basically done playing basketball at this moment. And I ended up getting my business degree and whatnot. But, I spent, 20 years of my life identifying as a basketball player, identifying as an athlete, and basically committing your whole life to that. And then the day that basketball is done and I graduate university, and now I'm trying to transition into my professional career, I couldn't find work. I couldn't find a job, even though I did all of the things that I was taught to do by society to stay in school, keep your grades good, and get an education. I ended up getting my business degree. And then after I graduated, I was handing my resume to everybody, and I wasn't getting any calls back because I had no experience on my resume. My only experience I would have had outside of a basketball player would have been like working at Foot Locker part-time or working at Costco or something. So at that moment, I realized like I didn't know how to show people that I didn't know my value. Like people can't look at my resume and say, this is Shaq. This is how personal he can be. This is how driven he is. This is, here's how he's going to, come in and be our personal brand for our organization. That's not reflected on a resume, especially for somebody who only has experience working at Costco and Foot Locker. So, now that I have my business degree and I'm trying to, crack the business world, I wasn't getting any calls back. And that's when I realized that I should have been using my time, as an athlete while I had the platform to network with people, because it's real easy as an athlete to think that you have a network of people because you're considered whatever popular, or people are fans or coming to the games, but that's not the same as having valuable networks that you can tap into. Those are spectators. Those are people who consume what you do as a form of entertainment. So, when I couldn't find a job after school, after I felt like I did all the things that that society told me that I had to do, that's when I realized that I needed somebody around me some people around me that I can tap into to say, hey, I'm looking to look for a job opportunity here. Can you put me in contact with somebody, and so on and so forth. And I was basically unemployed until I started going to networking events. I went to the Acadia Alumni Gala, and then I ended up running into somebody who was a former basketball player at Acadia, graduated back in 2003. And then that's how things started to roll. And that's when I really realized that you need a network in anything that you're going to do in life, because those are valuable connections that may not help you directly, but can help point you in the right direction of somebody who can help you, and kind of snowball from there. So that was the moment I realized that I really needed a network.
I guess I'll go next. First and foremost, I just want to say that I did have people around me that were trying to form a network at a very young age, and I discredited their efforts. I wasn't able to establish or identify their help. It wasn't until 2013 I did a program with Halifax Association for Community Living, and I created a program called In the Mix. Excuse me. I worked with youth with disabilities, anywhere from Down syndrome to cerebral palsy. And basically what we did was we created a space where they could make their own identity. They could become who they want to be without being their disability first. And I would have not been able to do that without the network that I had, those champions, as Chanae said, that kept pushing me to say, like, you have this insight, as I'm a person that lives with bipolar. I know what it's like to be kind of stereotyped against and different things like that, or need a different way to express myself, or I just need certain tools and resources that other people might not need. I was able to create this program, and it ended up being a good program, but just off the basis of my own lived experience, as well as my passion to help people like myself. My network came through with letters of recommendations and different things like that. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been able to start actually providing programming.
So for me, in my experience, in 2017, I was elected as the equity officer for the student union at Educator University. And my first order of business was I wanted to create a community, a safe space for Black students at Educator University. And so from that, the Black Student Association was birthed, and it's still existing, which is super exciting. And so from that standpoint, I was like, okay, I'm on student government, and I have all of these people who aren't really connected to this community. How do I get those who aren't part of BSA to care about BSA? And so I had to look for people who had some more influence, that could really push and advocate for us, for like other community organizations and things like that. And so it was kind of awkward for me. I felt very passionate about it, but then at one point, I had to go to the president and vice chancellor of the university, because I didn't want to go through all these hoops and hurdles through administration. I was like, you know what, we need to just go to the top, voice what the issues are, and go from there and see, who do you know that we can connect with, or how can we make sure that from the top down, these are the things that we address, because these are the things that matter, because students are having these experiences, and they don't feel like they belong here. And so for me, that was the first time where I really was like, hey, your network really does matter. And if you don't have the people that you need, how are you going to go and find those people? Or who do you already know that can connect you to those places where you need to be? And from there, that's kind of been the model. I've become more confident in just, reaching out to people who I've never met, but I know are connected to those resources and those people that I need to be in contact with, because I'm on a mission for something. And if you're going to help me reach my goal, I'm going to do my best to try and connect with you. And so that's been my experience.
Jeez, I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful that, first off, I can hear, but absolutely grateful that everybody else can hear these stories. Because this is honestly, it's the power, right? It's the magic. And all of you are highlighting these things, right? Like being able to be in places and spaces where we're exposed to different types of power, right? Being in athletics, being in different music industries, being in education, being in all of these different spaces where we as people of African descent are growing and trying to come into these spaces and explore and navigate, but then also we're trying to be professionals. And the reality, especially when you're trying to grow your network, if you want to finesse and be sustainable, you have to have a higher standard. Just frankly speaking, to everybody else, you have to carry yourself. You have to hold yourself in a different way. I'm not saying that's for better or for worse, but it's an opportunity where that you're setting yourself up for excellence, right? And sometimes we can be harder, and I want to get into that part a little bit later. Well, each of you are already talking about it, and I just want to kind of take a step back before we even get into navigating, just to kind of put a pin in the brand side, because a big part of being confident, of being able to advocate, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for others, is being grounded in who you are, right? And how you move, how you talk, how you dress, how you style your hair, and people get used to that. And that becomes part of your brand, right? How you make people feel, what they think of when they meet you or hear about you, what they associate with you. And that brand is how you get more opportunities. That brand is how you get, the funds going from here to here, because somebody believes in you, right? That's how you can take more risks. And so I would just love to, hit pause and hear from each of you how you went about building your brand, and, what the importance of finding your own brand is. and if I could reverse engineer it, maybe I'll pass it to Chanae to put you on the spot. But I'd love to hear from each of you, please.
Man, I didn't want you to start with me on this question because I feel like my brand is an ongoing process, because I'm not sure, like, do I have a brand or is it just me? Because I feel like I keep it 100 all the time. I'm me. I'm always authentically me, unapologetically me. I keep it real. I'll say whatever I need to say. And sometimes, you know, that could get me in trouble, or sometimes that could get people thinking, like, looking the other way. But I'm always me. I'm always me, but I always bring the energy. I always bring that 100, you know, in anything that I do. I approach it with optimism. But like I said, I do keep it 100. And sometimes the truth isn't what people want to hear. They don't want me to critique. You know, I'm even navigating that all the time in all of the spaces and asking, you know, perhaps changing your tone or perhaps doing it this way. And I'm just like, nah, like, that ain't me. This is me. And this is who you hired. And this is how it's going to be. So my confidence level, like, it was a work in progress. It took a long time for me to build that. So when I think about branding, I think about my confidence, because I don't know if I have a brand, but I know that I have me, and I'm confident in me and who I am, and everything that I do. You're going to get 110% effort, but I'm always going to keep it real too. So I'll let somebody else jump on that.
I can pass it. I can pass it. Easy. Dena, if I could pass it over to you, please.
That was coming. And seeing myself as a brand, honestly, like, it didn't even really start until recently. I would say, like, was this 2021, like 2019 or so. You know, starting the BSA and being the founding president, I realized I was the face of something, but I didn't realize how much, you know, people really associated me with the group, in the sense of, you know, they were there for me and not so much the group. And so then I kind of had to have a moment where, how do I make sure that this matters to you more so than, like, yes, you're supporting me, but this is going to be here after me. And so it was after that experience that I really started to think of myself as a brand, even though I didn't have a company at the time. And so when I started doing my work, you know, I really started to think about, you know, this is the work I love to do. I love creating events and experiences and creating opportunities, but I want to put myself in my business. And something I tell people all the time is, you know, you are a unique person. Therefore, whatever you put yourself into is going to be different somehow. Because, you know, there's all kinds of event managers and entertainment companies out there, but there's always going to be something different about what Vitamin D Entertainment does. And I know that because people are drawn to me as a person. And I mean, I'm not the only creative entrepreneur out there. There's Chevy Price. We're not the same person, but there's people who gravitate towards me, and there's people who gravitate towards her. Sometimes those people mix, sometimes they don't, and that's okay. But because there's unique elements about me, whatever I immerse myself into as part of my brand, it's unique and it's different. And so one day, I don't know, it just kind of hit me like, you know what? Like, you are a brand, you are a business, and you have to walk and talk as such. And so I started to surround myself with people who were kind of in the same realm. And this is kind of where I started to get in the mix with Ace and everything else, and people who are just doing that because that is what I want to work towards and what I want to be better at, and walking in that identity. I think that being a businesswoman and an entrepreneur was something that I never thought that I could do. It wasn't something that I really saw, like, where I grew up in Halifax. And so it was it's kind of rare for me. And I felt like I was kind of like sticking out from the crowd. And I didn't like that at first. And now it's just kind of the reality of things. And I kind of use that to my advantage because, you know, I can open doors for other people. It's not really about me getting clout or anything like that, but it's just, if I get in this door, who knows who can follow in after me? And that's what's most important. And so when I think about myself as a brand, I think about who's paying attention to me and who's going to feel like they can confidently walk into the doors that I've been able to help open at the end of the day.
Thank you. Shaquille, Mr. Shaq, could I pass it over to you, please?
Sir, for me, I guess the brand side of things started to stem from, realizing that, especially moving into the business world and especially where I'm from, that realizing that a lot of people's interaction with me is a lot of times their first interaction with somebody from a predominantly Black community, predominantly Black family. And I always did believe, like, how I carry myself in public and stuff like that is a reflection on my parents, right? So I always looked at myself in terms of the brand to always make sure, like, I treated with people with respect and whatnot, because that's a reflection of my parents. And I just start to see that evolve as I got into, the business world, and I'm starting to meeting people outside of the community. And even younger, when I was younger, I played baseball a lot, and I was often the only Black kid on baseball teams and stuff like that. And it's like, you don't really realize it, but that's a lot of people's first time or first interaction with somebody from a predominantly Black community. And people will paint you with that broad stroke of whatever their first introduction to you is. They're going to say, like, a lot of people from the community are like that. So just knowing that I had that type of influence on how people perceive the community, and obviously, like, growing up from the community and how the media paints the community, stuff like that, I always took pride in how I carried myself, especially when I started to go to university and stuff like that. I always said I was from North Preston and not from Dartmouth. And that, I guess, my brand comes from just wanting to use the positive stuff that people see from me and just let them know that I'm a product of my environment, not an exception. Because that's what it started to feel like. People will look at the success that I had, and me graduating university and doing all this stuff in the community. People, like, even people I started to meet outside the community, is like, how were you able to do it? How are you different? And it's like, I wasn't different. I just had people around me that helped me get there. And I just wanted to keep preaching that, like, I'm a product of my environment. I am a product of everything that I went through. And I don't want people to think that I'm different. I don't want the youth to think that I cracked the code or I figured out certain things. That's why I can bring success to the community and success in career. It's like all the struggles that I went through and from where I come from, that's all part of who I am. And we need to figure out how to use that struggle to motivate us and, carry your brand that way. So a lot of my brand comes from, wanting to represent my family, wanting to represent my community, and just knowing what my values are and being authentic with it, right? Like in the business world, like when I first entered the business world, I felt like I had to dress a certain way. I felt that I had to have my hair cut every week. And it's like, if I didn't have those things, then people will kind of look at me funny. It was like, oh, your hair is kind of long this week. And it's like, why do I have to have that responsibility on me to get my hair cut every Friday type of thing, right? So I don't know. It's just part of it's being, like, authentic and appreciating my values, my family values, core values, and also, just wanting to make the community proud and letting people know that I'm not an exception, or, other successful people from the community aren't an exception. We are a product of our environment, and that's just how I carry myself.
I just wanted to piggyback off that because I think that that's very important. That I feel like a lot of us are treated in that way because we made it, so we automatically, people look at us as the exception. And it's hard for us to navigate around that space. I get it all the time. I know that I'm one of very few that come from Lucasville, for example, that have pursued university or have gone or in the spotlight and doing all those things. And sometimes it's perceived negatively by your own peers, by things that you're doing, that they get envious and they get jealous, and it's a hard space to be in. So it's like you don't know what to do, like, in that instance, because You know, there's the narrative of being the exception, and then you're passionate about what it is that you're doing, and then you're, you know, you've made headway, and that you're proud of the contributions that you're doing for your community. But it's hard to navigate that space of being the exception. So I just wanted to touch a little bit more on that and emphasize that.
Oh, and we're gonna dive into that more. So I'm glad that you did.
I didn't expect anything else.
Oh goodness. Ms. Price, if I could pass it over to you, please.
Yeah. So I started rapping really young. I was in clubs since I was 16, you know, rapping and then leaving, of course. But I wasn't mature enough to know what a brand was. I didn't have people in my circle that talked about business in that aspect, especially around creating. And if I did, you know, they were much older. Like, shouts out to my cousin Asia, New Groove, Knucklehead, all of those guys. They had great stories and inspiration, but I didn't earn enough trust, and I didn't have enough experience to sit at the table yet. And I salute my family for allowing me space to make a name for myself and not piggyback off their own or theirs. But in terms of branding, I became the angry Black female rapper very quick. And I didn't know. A lot of people talked about it, and I wasn't included in the conversation. But I am an aggressive rapper. I rap about what I feel. Music was always something that was therapeutic for me. I'm also 5'3", and I rapped like I was 6'5". That's usually how people put it. But it had nothing to do with me as a complete person. It was just one part of who I was and one hat that I was wearing and was going to wear. It's really hard to put yourself in the public eye and say, you know, I'm going to be this person, I'm going to be that person. So ultimately, my brand has always been, if you really want to get to know me, then you'll make the space to get to know me. If you want to believe what everybody else has to say that's negative or stereotypes or anything of that such, then you don't deserve to be in my network or my circle. Not every woman, Black woman that says something, you know, or has something to say is angry at you. Maybe they're just angry. Maybe somebody just wants to be listened to. Maybe we just need more space for those conversations. Maybe, you know, we want to celebrate Black History Month every month and not just in February. So we want to rant about that. I don't know what it is, but it's just like, because people don't like something that you're presenting to them in that moment, they kind of mark you with that forever. I'm still known as the angry Black woman in most cases because I do consulting with a lot of organizations, and I, like Chanae, do not bite my tongue. And I'm hoping that they bring me in the room to not bite my tongue, because that would mean that I'm there to check off a box. And I don't like that either. So.
Must run in the family.
I think it does. That's why I was laughing the whole time you were saying it. I was like, oh, okay. But for me, it's that authentic experience. Like, we need to make sure, for my brand especially, that whatever people are experiencing with me during that time, with whatever hat, whether it's me as a rapper, a consultant, or if I'm working, you know, with the organization I work with, or whatever the case may be, you know, in that moment, it's my job to provide, as a professional, a good experience, an authentic one, a real one, and one that isn't always going to give the receiver what they want, but there's always room to grow. So my brand is based around relationships and experiences where we could be human and we could grow and we can make rap songs. Like, I encourage a lot of my friends who don't rap to make rap songs, to be mad or to be happy or whatever, or to just sit down and express themselves. I like to make room for listening to different genres of music, to having those deep conversations. I usually mediate a lot of hard dialogue conversations, but yet I'm a rapper. Am I just a rapper? I'm also a songwriter. So it's like brands evolve. And I think that as somebody who watches brands develop and unfold, allowing room for that experience, that ability to be human, to grow, to be forgiven, to make mistakes, all of those things within brands. I think there's this standard of perfection. And I feel like with my brand, I run from that. I'm not perfect at all. So, I mean, that's just it. Thank you.
No, thank you each again for highlighting, right, the realities that brands evolve. Always, I think every day, just like, us people, businesses, you either have to grow or I think you die a little bit. And with brands, they are just like the people, and especially getting into the business world, brands, or when you incorporate things, they get their own legs and they become just like people. So they can, just like Apple, right? People find out that the batteries are getting phased out, and all of a sudden people don't like Apple. Or you get some artists or people that support certain politics or certain things that are not appropriate, and all of a sudden their brands go down. And so it's figuring out how to navigate, I think, in that space, especially as young professionals or young people, how other people are seeing them, but how they can also be kind to themselves as they go through these different experiences, because you're not always going to have the answers and you will make mistakes. But at the same time, it's important to have the people around you that are going to pick you back up and not just, let you go all the way out to one side. And so as we kind of get into that, looking at the real, navigating, growing up, now into this digital age, but being a young professional, being somebody who's trying to grow, trying to evolve. The next question that I want to touch on, and we've already gotten there a little bit, but what's the importance of being intentional in building your network? Yeah, your brand, but what's the importance of being intentional in building your network? And I just want to highlight, you've all said, a lot of you, different associations, different boards, we're going to dive into the different, nonprofit organizations that you're all a part of and that you've launched in the next part, but just in spaces with other people. There's a lot of pull always of, you got to meet people, you got to grow your network, network, go meet people, talk. And we're exposed to lots of people, whether you're going through school, whether you're going through the workplace, but not everybody is for you. Not everybody has the same vibe, the same dreams or interests. And so in that, again, you're still, find out more on the rest of the way, but right now in this moment for you, what is the importance of being intentional in building your own brand and your network?
Can I start on that?
Please.
Being intentional with your network for me means that we establish that we want to build together. I think that introducing yourself to somebody and saying, let's have a transactional relationship. That's why people meet and then they part, right? Like the point of community and longevity is saying like, hey, let's connect. We're in each other's orbit. Like we might not need each other right now, but let's still build, grow, learn, be involved, support, show up, show out, share something. Since, COVID, we can't go anywhere, but you know what I mean? Like do those kinds of things. And then, say one day you wake up and you realize like, if I today want to become a baller, I'm like, Shaq, help me out, teach me some things randomly. It would be more authentic of a transaction than if I just said today, like, yeah, I want to, get a scholarship. Can you help me out? Because people are human first. And like that first impression, we could always glaze over. We could always gaslight. Like there's not a problem with that. We can all do it. But it's really important to build confidence in your network, in that interaction, to build trust. And you build that through experiencing things together. So for me, I stay far, far away from transactional relationships. If you're just calling me because you want something, probably not going to answer next time. If you're calling me because you're interested in things that I'm doing, or you're doing some of the similar things, and you're just like, hey, like maybe let's chat or grab a coffee sometime, or just letting you know you're on my radar, well, I'm most likely more, enticed to work with you. That makes sense.
So I'll jump in a little there. Yeah, I think it's important to be intentional with who that you're networking with. I kind of look at my network as relationships, not necessarily just individuals that I approach when I need something, or individuals who approach me when they need something. I'm constantly plugging. So it's like a mutual relationship between my network. So I'm, they're building capacity in me, but I'm also building capacity in them. There are areas within my network that I don't have the expertise in, and I'll lean on them to bring that expertise or to bring that skill set, and they'll lean on me to do the same thing. Shaq, I've had conversations with him about plugging me for jobs, but I've also had negative experiences within my network. There's been times when, we're just having a conversation, I'm pitching my ideas, and then I see them take my ideas and do them. That's when I know that the transaction is not mutually beneficial, and that you're just using me to get my ideas, and then they run free with them. And I've seen some of these ideas come to fruition, and I'm just like, all right, that's cool. I know who not to be plugging anymore, or to continue that relationship with. And I've seen that happen a few times with various individuals. So they recognize that, I do have good ideas. I can bring that innovation, and, but they're just using my brand and my platform to do that. When for me, I'm trying to make sure everybody eats. I'm trying to bring everybody to the table. So if I'm putting forward like a program, that's just my lens. So that's what I keep bringing up in terms of program development. I'm bringing in everybody that I know that can contribute to the development of that we're all going to eat at the same time. And then I hope, that the expectation is that when they see me doing something that they like and that they want to be a part of, that they're going to invite me to their table next. So I see my network as relationships. And it goes back to that first interaction that I had with Senator Thomas Wanda Bernard, in which he said that. And I've been building my network across the province and now across the nation, since 2008, essentially. And it's just been growing. And I've been connected to so many opportunities because of my network, because of the relationships that I've formed. And I think that I've brought in a lot of opportunities to the network as well. So the work's not done. Like I said, it's ongoing. I'm continuously building and rebuilding my network on a daily basis, essentially. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on the relationship aspect of networks. That I think that it's important to continue cultivating relationships with your network, so that it doesn't look like you're just coming to them for something when you need them, but you're actually a valuable contributor to the network, and they're contributing as well.
Yeah, and I'll build on that, Chanae. We talked a lot today about, you're your own business and your own brand. So when I think about building your network, if you look at it from a business standpoint, if I'm my own business, building my network would be like building my board of directors around me, right? So when you think about businesses that build board of directors, or nonprofit organization that builds boards, they build boards that can bring value to help the overall business or the overall society, and then vice versa, right? So, when you're building a board of directors, you're gonna have somebody who has a finance background. You're gonna have somebody who has a fundraising background, somebody who has an HR background. So it's very strategic. And that's the same goes with when I build my network. I know what my verticals are. I know what type of spaces I like to be in. I know I'm in community, I'm in sport, I'm in coaching, I'm in tons of different things. So I make sure that I build my network strategically around me of people who are going to help the business of me, but also vice versa, that I can provide value to them. There's tons of people who sit on board of directors for the resume to help propel themselves in career. So it can be a two-way street, but it has to be intentional. And you have to realize that not everyone needs to be in your network. If your values aren't aligned, or your visions don't align, and what you're trying to get out of the relationship and vice versa, then, maybe that person doesn't need to be in your network. But, kind of echoing what Chanae said, is very much a two-way street. And there's going to come a time where people are going to want to be in your network to get access to information that you have, or access to the community that you have access to. And if you're not conscious of them not bringing value as you're adding value to them, then it's a one-way street. You're going to become burnt out, and it's just going to feel like you're servicing people around you, vice versa. And also, I'd say it's important to understand the difference between, a mentor and then somebody in your network, right? So like, you know, mentors are more so, in my opinion, are somebody that are there helping you learn as you grow and kind of showing you the ropes and sitting down with you and talking to you when, you know, you can learn certain aspects of where you go wrong or wherever, versus somebody in your network. You might encounter somebody within your network that you do one transaction with one time. It could be for business, could be for work, could be for wherever. And then that person doesn't really check back in on anything. But you know that you still got somebody to call if you need somebody who's a recruiter or somebody who's in marketing or whatever. But mentors can also be in your network, but they're more so somebody who's going to help that business grow or that brand grow or help you grow. And they're there to kind of, you know, teach you along the way, and then vice versa. You're also there to teach them as well. So the mentor and mentee relationship is definitely a two-way street, and it's a lot of information sharing versus people in your network. It could be very transactional, but you need to make sure that that transaction is adding value to you and you're adding value to that person as well.
Yeah, kind of going off of what everyone's been saying. I think for me, what it's been is, you know, what is it about my brand or my business that this person or this organization is connected to? And so for creative people, it's I'm connected to all these resources, whether it's performing opportunities, showcasing opportunities, funding, this, that, and the other thing. And then for organizations, it's they want to be connected with the creative community or the BIPOC community, or more specifically, the Black community, and then kind of looking for those ways in which they want to be connected. So with many organizations I've partnered with, like DBDLI is just one example. I don't really do much in regards to education, but education is something that's important to me. And so the Black community is also important to me. And so we level on that. And so we can figure out a way to work together and bring in elements of creativity and creative arts as that's part of the culture. And so looking at those ways that what I do connects with who I'm trying to have in my network. And because you want people to, once again, be invested in what you're doing. And so to be invested, you have to care. And so you're only going to care about those things that you feel are connected to you or your organization and who you represent. And so that's usually my method of how I go about who I want to connect with, or what type of relationship I want to develop with a particular creative person or organization.
Well, I hope everybody's just taking notes. There's just too many gems. I'm taking notes. I'm not even gonna lie about it. Jeez. I mean, some of the facts.
Just don't take my ideas.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Never. But highlighting, you know, some of the important facts, right? The element of needing to have people around you that are aligned. The reality that especially of people of African descent, but especially as young professionals growing into these spaces, we have to start to figure out what are our boundary conditions, what are our priorities, and how do we feel around other people, other organizations? How do we feel in these spaces? A big part of that, and I know it's specifically around mental health and well-being, just overall health, is paying attention to how we feel as we're doing things, as we're around people, and as we're exploring professional settings. You know, we can be in situations where we're on boards and, you know, we are the new hire, but we don't actually have a voice, or people don't actually make space for us. And so as it transitions into the next part of the question around navigating, I want to ask each of you, what is the importance of self-care as you push to navigate becoming a professional or being a professional? Of course, there's added stuff, you know, when you're somebody of African descent, you know, especially if you're a youth coming up in these spaces. But I really just want to highlight how self-care has to be a regular part of that conversation because, you know, as each of you touched on, if you don't find your routines, if you're not around the right people, you'll burn out. And a lot of relationships, especially early on, if you're someone who is authentic, as each of you talked about, if you're someone that keeps it real, people are drawn to that. And if you're young and you have magic, which everybody on here absolutely does, people will try to get that without telling you how much value your magic actually has. And so it becomes a kind of taking relationship, right? So I just want to hit pause on that to really, you know, ask each of you, what has self-care looked like and what is the importance of self-care as you go and navigate building your network and also becoming a professional? So I don't know who wants to take that, but I'll pass it over.
I can kick that one off. You know, self-care is something that I'm kind of learning as a secondary thing as I progress in my career. Especially, you know, when I graduated university, like my whole concept was like, how do I apply the athlete drive to the professional world? And it's real easy to basically they get caught up in the cycle to say, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. I want to separate myself because I want to be different and grow in my career. And then you not realizing that your self-care is starting to kind of take a back seat. So I guess for me, it's like I'm learning that lesson now as, you know, I graduated 2016. So like 4 or 5 years into my professional career is like self-care for me is learning where I add value to certain organizations, certain situations, and really just understanding myself and to start saying no to things, right? I I'm very guilty of just saying yes to everything because I'm a helper. I feel like I'm a people pleaser, and I also want to gain momentum. And you know, the way I was kind of taught to gain momentum is just do stuff, right? Get your name out there, be hungry, and just do stuff. So with that, you know, I'm starting to realize that, you know, especially when like, you know, when the Black Lives Matter movement really started to peak last year, there were people reaching out for people to talk to. Like there was one time I had a conversation with a bank. I won't disclose which bank, and it was all of their regional VPs. It was all of their VPs on a call, and they wanted to talk to me about my perspective on growing up as a Black young man. And it's like at first I seen it as an opportunity. It's like, yes, I'm going to meet all these VPs. I'm going to do it. And then I'm like, but my perspective is only a very, very, very small piece of the Black experience. So it's like understanding where you bring value and why you bring value, and understanding what your values are, and knowing when to say no is a huge lesson that I'm learning right now for self-care. Because you know, one of the ways that I was coached in my professional career is like, you got to be twice as good. You got to be twice as better. You got to stand out. And I was wired to say, to do that, I have to do all these things. But over the years, those things become more and more draining, more and more time consuming. And people are always going to keep asking. If you keep doing, people are always going to keep asking. And for me, like self-care is knowing now, especially now that I understand the value that I bring. I understand I got momentum in my career now, is understanding that I have to start saying no to stuff that is not aligned with myself, because I need that space. I need my own family time. I need time for myself, your self-thoughts and self-talk and all that stuff. And it's real easy to neglect that as you're just grinding every day, and you want to share your light with people. But yeah, for me, it's just understanding when to say no to things, and understanding that you can say no to things and be perfectly fine with it and not feeling bad about it. That's a lesson that I'm learning more and more every day. Because you know, if we're up to me, I'm always going to bite off more than I can chew, and that on the back end of that, your self-care is going to be the one that is taking a hit. You're going to still deliver for people, but your self-care is going to take a back seat. So just saying no is huge for me.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on that because I think that that's, you know, something that probably all of us struggle with saying no. Because I know, like, when an opportunity comes and an opportunity is presented, or if you can do this, can you do that? Can you be here? Can you do this? I'm like, yes, 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 yes. But, you know, starting to enter into the professional world, I think the reason why it was difficult is because I wanted to please everybody. I wanted to be involved in everything. I wanted to get my name and things out there. And I find now that I have that platform where I can be truly authentically myself and not give two about it, I'm more inclined to be able to say, no, I'm not doing that, or we ain't doing that, or I'm not going to be there, or I'm more enticed and able to confidently say no about things like that. So building on for the self-care aspect, that is extremely important to me. and it's extremely important to my mental health. I find that me being active is, it helps me set the tone for the day. So I go to the gym every single morning to start off the day, because if I don't, I recognize that there's a change in my behavior, there's a change in my mood, and I can't put my best self forward if I'm not taking care of myself. So how can I care for my community if I'm not caring for me? And this week, I'll be honest, I haven't been there, and I notice I'm irritated. I'm having much more attitude than I normally do, and it's because it's just been a tough couple weeks for me that I just haven't been able to get there, and I'm trying to pull. I know I'm pulling myself thin in terms of African Heritage Month, community violence, the death in my family. There's a lot of things that I'm navigating right now. And, I'm really prioritizing, which I know I shouldn't be doing. I'm prioritizing my family. I'm prioritizing the community. I'm prioritizing my work instead of myself. And so I recognize that though, and I'm going tomorrow morning and I'm going to restart because I was like, I'm going to wait till Monday, but I was like, no, if I put that off, and then I'm going to keep going back and I'll just keep saying no. So yeah, I really prioritize definitely it's physical health, but it helps my mind. It helps me ground myself and to take on the next day. But yeah, I think in terms of the saying no, I think that that's something that we all struggle with. And it does affect our ability to perform self-care well. And I think that if we don't care for ourselves, then we can't care for others. So I wouldn't be able to care for my network, and I wouldn't be able to care for my community unless I prioritize my own mental and physical health.
Kind of going off of Chanae's point of prioritizing, that's one thing I started to do, is just really prioritizing different areas of my life. And if something comes my way and it doesn't really advance that area of my life, like I try not to spend time on it. When it comes to accepting opportunities for gigs and things like that, is this a relationship that is going to be of mutual benefit at the end of the day? And if it is that something that I actually have the capacity to do right now? And so kind of going through those questions and filtering that through and really seeing at the end of the day, is this something that I can do? Because I'm trying to preserve myself. Because at the end of the day, I have a brand and I have a business. And so I have to think of those things. I have to think of my family and just those who really count on me. I have people who look up to me. I'm a mentor for a lot of young people. And so how am I sustaining myself for those people? I manage 2 artists right now. Am I able to commit to my artists the way that I'd like to at this time? And if I have too many things on the go, I can't. Kind of going back to routine as well, for me, my faith is very important to me. And so when I get up first thing in the morning, I spend time with God. And so doing that, that's one thing that really gets me grounded and keeps me in a good headspace for the day, and just kind of reminds me of, what I'm doing, and that I've been created to do something great. And so, really keeping that in mind, I have to do what I have to do to preserve myself. And so self-care is huge. I think that sometimes when it comes to being a professional, other people forget that you're human first. And sometimes you forget also. And so really, when other people aren't considering that all the time, you have to. And so you really have to make it a point and make a conscious effort to really say, how's Dena the person doing right now? Can Dena the person do this today? Sometimes you have to put on auto replies on your email because it's just too much right now, and that's just.
And I've gotten some of your auto replies.
Yeah, you have. Right? I'm gonna make that very sometimes. Like, listen, I'll get back to you. If you're not ready, then right now, I'm not this thing.
Yeah.
And so those things are important. Setting up those things, I'm starting to get very nitpicky with my schedule, like to the half hour. If it's outside this half hour, I'm sorry, but this meeting is done. Because some people just want to, you want to have a meeting, but they also want to chat about what's going on, and you don't have the time. And so understanding that those things are important and setting those things in place, because when you prioritize those things for yourself, other people, if they want to work with you, and whatever the relationship is, they need to respect those boundaries. And so that's kind of what's going on with self-care right now, and also saying no to some things, as Shaq said, is very important as well.
I agree with all of you. I'm really bad at saying no. My 5-year-old is actually teaching me how to say no. Self-care for me is something that I never really learned. I was always put in positions where I had to put other people ahead of me, which isn't a bad thing because it also contributed to who I am today and the accomplishments and trials and tribulations that made me me. But I will say that since I've become a mother, it's been more important to learn about self-care. You know, my son has taught me that by being his mother and somebody who has to guide his, you know, learning, his dreams, his values, his morals, it really made me say like, well, what are mine? So my biggest thing for self-care is being still, not having any plans. I wish I could work out, but my cardio is really bad. So, but being still. And then I have 3 points that I usually focus on: self-exploration. So who am I really outside of social media, outside of social norms, outside of all of that stuff? Like, you know, what are my dreams? Do I really need a mansion? Do I want a Kim Kardashian butt? Like, what are my my values, right? The second part would be embracing healing. As Chanae mentioned, we have lost somebody in our family, and I feel like it's really important that regardless if we're 30 or not, it's time to learn how to grieve and to give ourselves that privilege. You know, setting boundaries and saying, what is draining me? How can I set boundaries with those things? Like, all those things contribute to your healing. And as I say, recharging, like with batteries or something. And then the last part is self-compassion. I feel like we don't forgive ourselves for making mistakes. We say yes all the time because if we don't do it, we're scared nobody else is going to do it, or just because we like being busy, or because we want to have a voice. Especially being Black youth, like we want to make sure somebody's at the table, but sometimes we can't always be there at full capacity. So just being able to admit that we're human and acknowledging our errors and being willing to work on it. So that's what I do. I sit still and I work on those 3 levels of things, and it's pretty weird, but it's cool. So that's my self-care.
Well, thank you each so much for giving voice to that in the ways that I believe only you could, you know, and giving it justice in the fullest way. Because the reality is that self-care looks different to everyone. Everyone, you know, mental health, physical health, all these things are a spectrum, and everyone's on it, you know, and obviously, you know, a series of days or traumas or experiences can push you further down or further up. But the reality is that we have to start finding ways to build it into our routine. And, you know, that could be daily moments of pause or moments of just being still, you know, or I mean, I'm not going to be outside doing any running during the winter, you know, but in the spring, getting outside in nature and finding ways that we can all connect is so important for people to do these things on their terms. As we look, you know, I want to get back into the whole side of you know, network, because a lot of what you're all saying as well is, you know, it's relationships, it's self-care, it's setting boundaries, it's respecting and being respected, it's seeing the value and also knowing that you're getting value. And to me, what that, you know, really is talking about is you're building your own individual communities, and it's important to be intentional. You've all said about who you have in there. You know, the age doesn't matter. It's more about how aligned you are with them. You know, if they're further along the journey or they're, you know, just on there, how do they fit and how do they mix into the things that you're passionate about? And so as we look at that into this space of thriving and mobilizing for yourself, but also for your communities, I want to kind of dive into that a little bit more, especially where we have ACE, especially where we have the Futures program. Especially where, you know, Dena and Shevy, both of the managing as well as the practicing sides of what you're doing, you know, you're mobilizing not just yourselves, but fans. You're mobilizing other artists, other people in these spaces by opening doors and showing them it's possible but then also bringing people tangibly to the spaces, you know, through economics, not just having nice conversations that make people feel good, but opportunities that come to it, collaborating through these things. So hitting pause. What I would love to ask everyone is, you know, what are some tangible ways that you can begin to leverage your network? I want to break that question into two parts. Leveraging your network, so to create one, to grow it, or to mobilize your network for yourself and for your own level up along the journey. And then the second part, which we can, you know, table later, but the second part is how can you mobilize your network to address social issues? And so we'll table that for the end, but I want that playing in the back of your mind. So the first part, we'll sit with that. What are tangible ways that someone can mobilize their network? So create a network, grow their network, and leverage it to help you level up. So how can someone level up through mobilizing their network?
I can jump into this one first if you like. You know, some tangible ways that I like to build my network is, you know, come to the table with value first. I don't, you know, when people are building networks and stuff like that, it can be real easy to, you know, seem like you're just asking for help and not really bringing any value. So what I like to do, if, you know, if I need somebody in my circle or I need somebody in my network for a specific reason, it could be whatever lane, marketing, recruitment, or whatever, I make sure that first interaction, I'm figuring out some kind of way to bring value to them right out of the gate. You know, that could be sending them an article that made me think of them, or that could be, you know, talking about a certain problem that I know that they're having, and I have an expertise in that space and coming to the table with, you know, a solution, right? So I guess when I'm building my network and I'm reaching out to folks, and I have to do it all day for work in terms of like recruitment, and like my whole job is based around networking and meeting new people. So when I usually reach out to people for the first time, I'm here to say, you know, you're somebody who we have interests are aligned, our values are aligned. What can I do for you? Like, is there anything that you need from me? And I even take that approach on all of the boards that I sit on. Like, I sit on a bunch of boards for like government boards. I'm part of the ACE group, a lot of, you know, nonprofit organizations. But I don't go to those boards just to kind of contribute to that organization. I make it very clear that each person that's part of that board or organization, if you guys need anything from me in terms of marketing or recruitment, whatever, reach out to me. Like, I want to be very clear that I want to be very clear that I'm bringing value to you. And, you know, that first introduction, I want to make sure that I can provide some value to you so you can see the value that I add to your life. And then I know that sometime down the road, that's going to pay dividends for me when I need it. So anytime I'm building my network and I'm reaching out to folks to network or connect, I make sure that I offer some kind of initial value in that first meeting, whether it be an article that I share or, you know, Clubhouse is an app I don't know if many people know about Clubhouse, but there's a new app that's going around Clubhouse. So I just been sending that to like young entrepreneurs that I know. It's like, I got some invites, here you go, here's why I thought of you. And I just use that as a way to basically network with new people and say, like, I thought of you, I'm here to help in any capacity. And that's usually how I make the first introduction and putting somebody into my network.
I love it. Providing value from the jump and keeping it sustainable along the way, because it's all about the relationship. That's so critical. Dena, you about to jump in?
Yeah, for sure. Kind of going off of that point, just like showing people that you value them is huge. And that's something we talk about a lot in social work, is building relationships. And so something that I think I've been getting a lot better at. And so just looking at those ways you can build that. One thing I have been starting to do for sure is trying to enter myself into spaces where I feel like I should be maybe later, but just seeing where it's at. So getting on the board of Music Nova Scotia was a huge thing for me because although, you know, I've been involved, excuse me, in the creative arts industry, I felt inadequate putting myself forward and nominating myself to be on that board because everyone else had all these years of experience in the music industry. And here I am a year and a half in, still trying to figure things out. And I was just like, you know what? You know, I feel like even though I don't have as much experience as everyone else, I know that I do have value in this space. And so I was like, let me just try it out. And I luckily was voted in on that board. And so then I got there and I was like, okay, now I'm here. What value can I add to each individual person on this board? So kind of going off of what Shaq was saying, you know, there's people on the board who own venues, there's managers, there's publishers, this, that, and the other thing. You know, so helping them get connected with those creative people, that content, but then also the organization as a whole. You know, the first thing I did when I got onto the board, I went and said, listen, your grant applications are a little bit whack right now. We need to fix this. And my words exactly were, your grant process is perpetuating systemic racism. And they were like, whoa, how's this happening? And so having that conversation. And so, you know, it was kind of awkward at first because I'm just kind of coming in. But, you know, we had to get these things done. And so saying, you know, more people will value what you're doing when you create more space for them. And I know how to help you create that space. And so then that's kind of how we built that relationship. And from there, so many things have happened. You know, word of mouth is a huge thing. And I don't think I really understood the power of it until I got to this point in the industry. And so when you really build that relationship and you are just authentically yourself and you enter a space and you do what you're there to do, and people, they benefit from that and they support you in that, they kind of help you get into those other spaces. And so now I find like I'm always DMing like these different organizations that I'd like to work with in the future and just say, hey, this is a little bit about my business and what we do, and this is how I think I could benefit from the work that you do, and vice versa. And so getting introduced and then just leaving it there, and then maybe down the line you kind of go back and say, hey, just want to reconnect, this is what's going on, would you be interested in collaborating? I'm all about collaboration. And so looking for who can I connect with, maybe not right now, but in the future. And when you have your future goals lined up, you can kind of look at those things and look at who would help me down the line, and kind of getting that ball rolling. I don't think it's ever too early to start that. And I find that now, once your name kind of gets out there, you can just kind of keep that going. And so that's been my tactics for maximizing my network so far.
I just want to jump in around the word of mouth aspect that you're talking about, because I feel like if we present ourselves in a certain way and we educate in a certain way, and you know, leveraging our brand that we have, the word of mouth kind of, it comes naturally. So like I was struggling thinking about this question, I'll be honest, because I find that there are people within my network that I'm not even sure who they are. And what I mean when I say that is that there's people that are plugging me into opportunities, or putting my name forward, or bringing my name to the table in a conversation. And then that's where relationships form. So I get a lot of emails from people I've never even heard of. And they say, hey, I seen this about you, or this person talked to me about you and I wanted to meet you and have a conversation. Or so there's people that are in my corner that I'm not even sure who they are. And I actually do the same practice. So there's so many individuals that I'm bringing to the table without them even recognizing that it's me. So there's opportunities that I see a fit for, say, let's say Dena, for example, that people are talking about at an event that they want to put on, and they're not really sure like how to go about it. I'm like, I got the perfect person. Here's the contact information, call them. And then they'll just call, and like, I don't know if the transaction happened or not. And then I'll see the work and I'm like, I knew that person would be good for it. And even the article that I'm a part of that came out recently, they were looking for other individuals to feature, and they're looking for production people, and they're looking for filmmakers or creators. And I was just giving them all these names to like be a part of this with us. I know that you have the expertise in this. I know you have a great story to share. I know that you have these things. So I'm constantly, I just plug it, and people are plugging me too. Without me recognizing that or even understanding or how it came. So I feel like you know, when you're putting yourself forward and showcasing your value and showcasing your expertise, the network kind of comes behind you. And then there are intentional ways, obviously, through that a champion identification. So identifying who are the champions, who are the allies within your organization, or who are the allies within community that's going to support your goal or your vision of whatever it is that you're putting forward, and building a relationship with that individual. So like I said, I try to not look at in a network as a transactional thing. I want to continue that relationship. I want to continue learning and growing with you. I want to continue sharing opportunities back and forth with you. A lot of the resources and advisory committees that I'm a part of have actually even benefited me, even though I'm the one that's meant to advise them. So what I mean by that is the African Nova Scotian Employment Lab, for example. I wouldn't even have seen the position that I applied for and recently got with the Halifax Public Libraries if it wasn't for that network of individuals. The Halifax Public Libraries, I'll be honest, was not an organization that I was looking at of ever being a part of, and they know that as well. So it's fine that I share that here. But I'm just saying that, you know, I'm finding opportunities through my network, and my network is finding opportunities through me, and I want to continue to cultivate that relationship with my network that I have.
I guess I'm left.
I was just about to say.
I was trying to find a mute button. But yeah, just like everybody said, it's really, really important to make sure that that exchange is healthy. Whether it's, you know, working together right away or not, making sure that exchange is there. One thing that I would advise, though, in terms of your network, is as you're rapidly meeting people, because things happen very quickly. You might meet somebody on Instagram that will tell you things that they're good at, publication, syncing, different things like that, but it might not be in their bio. Why? Because it's not everybody's business, or because, you know, it's a personal account, different things like that. Make a note of it, and start creating your own directory. I advise that to people who even remember things on an ongoing basis, because in that moment when you really need that connection, you might forget that Bob down the street can help you with the concrete, right? It's just kind of how it goes. But the biggest thing for me really is the fact that I've been put in positions to travel the world, to perform in front of all kinds of people. I'm an introvert. I only like doing things behind the scene. I'm not really good at this stuff, but I'll try it. But when it comes to me being in a space or a room with people who are saying, oh, this thing here this program isn't working, or we're not getting enough of a specific demographic, or this thing is broken, or there's this mess, I'm usually the person that will come in and have that hard conversation and also create solutions. So that's usually what I'm known for on this side of things, but sorry about that. But I'm not publicly known for that. So I'm another person that you might want to write down and say, Chevy's a rapper, but she's also good at programming and facilitating different situations. I also want to salute people in the networks that put Black youth into a room with people who usually won't sit down with us, including, you know, the universities. A lot of them, the deans won't sit down with us. There's people like Ryan at Yak who have made opportunities or room for me to meet with these people and have conversations. And I mean, the experience itself is a blessing because we wouldn't get it out elsewhere. Most times we wouldn't be able to get it on our own because of boundaries or limitations. But being oppressed youth from oppressed communities that don't really get put in positions unless we're ticking off a box, it's really good to say thank you to those people in your network that give you those opportunities.
Okay, geez, it's a lot to take in on every front, right? Being able to leverage your brand, the power of word of mouth, as well as you said, Chevy, like being authentic, but then taking the moments of pause to say thanks, because it all adds up. Just like, you know, Chanae and Shaq, as you mentioned, making sure that the value exchange is clear, making sure those boundaries are clear. I think it's those small things that everyone appreciates, just like the first interactions. It's those things that people pick up on and want to stay a part of. So as we transition into the final stage, I think everybody touched on it, but I also just want to, just a 1-2 punch kind of roundtable, your perspectives. How can people not just youth, not just professionals of African descent, but how can people mobilize their networks to address social issues? We could say anti-Black racism, we could say discrimination, but just a 1-2 punch, because I want it to be tangible. Everyone can take action on their own terms. Everyone has a platform to take action on their own terms. So I'd love to dive in because I'm mindful. Some people are already dropping some questions and I'm getting those notifications. So I want to get to the Q&A, but I want to make sure we end on that note. How can people take that action on their own level, mobilize their networks or whatever the case is, but to address social issues?
I'll go. You can mobilize your network by getting consults from the community that you are hoping to serve. Please stop thinking that just because a Black person is there, that Black person knows what those Black people need in that Black community. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't. And it's tokenizing. It's gross. Like, it's really gross. So that was my input. Thanks.
Thank you for saying that.
If I could pass it, Shaq, let me grab your insight, boss man.
My perspective is, if you're looking to mobilize your network for the benefit of the community that you serve or whatever it may be, I think come to your network with solutions, not problems, right? It's really easy to basically reach out to your network and say, we're having a problem with whatever it may be. We have a problem with employment, and we're having a problem with violence or whatever it is. And honestly, all that's doing in terms of you going to your network and people that you know with problems, and no proposed solutions is just further solidifying that stigma that people have of the community. Is you're representing that community in a light that is not reflective. There's tons of problems that exist. There's tons of problems that people face every day. But for me, anytime I tap into my network and I identify a problem, I'm not tapping into my network to say, here's a problem that needs fixing. I'm going, here's a problem. How can we work together to fix this? I already have some proposed solutions. I've already consulted with the community. And that's the kind of the approach that I took with the basketball court, right? Like, I didn't just go and I'm going to build a basketball court in North Preston and all is going to be well. I reached out to the basketball community. I reached out to the church because obviously the court is right in the church's parking lot. And, once I kind of formulated a game plan, I went to HRM. I went to the province of Nova Scotia on, here's how a basketball problem is going to solve a specific solution to access, to raising awareness around kids dropping out in university that were playing basketball. I could have easily went to them with the facts that I researched to say, you know what, a student athlete from the community who goes to play basketball at the next level only has a 12% chance of graduating. That's a problem. We need help. Instead, I took it a step further to say, kids from the community have a 12% chance of graduating university that play basketball. Here's how this court is going to help them. Here's the programs that we're going to integrate that's going to help them. So I didn't come to the table with problems. I came to the table with solutions, and I didn't come to the table with just features of a certain project. I came to the table with benefits. So when I'm looking at mobilizing for the benefit of the community that I serve, like was said, like, we have to consult with the community, but also come to the table with solutions, propose solutions. And that's what's really going to kickstart a relationship and formulating an action plan. If there are some solutions on the table that are kind of right in your reach and you can execute on those solutions. So just come to the table with solutions.
Appreciate it.
So I'll build a little on that. This too also is a little challenging to answer because I recognize that some folks don't have a clear understanding on social issues that don't impact them. So how do I get them to understand my experience or their a different perspective and get them to care about that? Because I think, when people care about solving issues, then they'll take a stance or they'll participate in that. So the challenge is to get folks to care. So how do I get them to care is by building awareness. So around that issue. So I'll even call it myself, for example, homelessness. I was not aware of how big of an issue that is in Halifax specifically until I hit university. I was like, there's homelessness. Like I was completely had blinders on, you know, that happened. So I think that if we start there by building awareness and building a clear understanding on how this is affecting a specific population, that's when people are going to start to care and to start paying special attention to that specific issue, and then they're going to work with you to change that specific issue. So, you know, me being a self-proclaimed social activist, you know, how do I get people to care about issues that impact the Black community? How do I get them to understand the issues that impact the community? Because I'll say for education, for example, this was a very big challenge for me, to get them to understand that the conversation doesn't just need to be on academia and how do I do math equation or how do I do science. It's how do I support this individual in a holistic way to ensure that they have the appropriate supports in place that reflect them, and to ensure that they're doing well and that they're being supported from a culturally informed lens, from a trauma-informed lens, thinking about all of the complex issues that affect a student walking into the classroom. So the first step is to definitely bring awareness to the issue and to help educate your network on that issue and give them the best possible perspective that you can on that experience. Because if you don't have that, it's unlikely that they're going to care enough to support you in that social issue.
That's straight facts. I love it. Dena, passing it over to you.
Man, everyone's just dropping all these gems. I'm like, what else is there left to say? I don't know. What I would say to kind of top that off is, honestly, people, like, just your willingness to be uncomfortable. I think that if you're willing to be uncomfortable, then that means you care more about doing the work and doing it well, more so than you care about just ticking off a box. We know when you're just trying to tick off a box. So either you care or you don't.
We know.
Right, we know. And so either you really want to do the work and you really care about this, or you don't. And just stand on that. Honestly, I think that when you get passionate about really doing that work and doing it well, you know that you should be consulting the community first. And you know, you can come up with as many solutions as you want, but you still need to go to the community and see if that's what they really need, if that's what they're really looking for, because at the end of the day, we're going to know as a collective what it is that's lacking in this relationship. And then also looking at your own organization and seeing who's not at your table. You know, what voices are missing and what is actually missing from your business or your organization. You know, with the clinic that I'm doing my placement at right now, we've been talking a lot about, you know, okay, we have a diverse community that comes here and they access our services. Okay, so how do we make sure that the work that we do here is reflecting the needs of the community? How do you make sure that we're making those connections and this, that, and the other thing? And what does that look like? And so looking at what does social justice look like in healthcare every single day and for these different communities. And so there's a lot of uncomfortable conversations that come with that on both ends, but they're necessary. And so that willingness to do that, you know, makes it a lot easier to go into that process. And then you build that relationship and you understand that, you know, this is a collective effort, but everyone needs to be on board. And so if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, just stay where you're at, I would say, because you're not bringing value to us if you're just trying to tokenize, like Shevy said. We don't need that. That's been going on long enough, and we want people who really care to really say, you know, we value you and we want to make sure that we do this thing and we do it right. And so that's my one too on that note.
Yeah, I appreciate all of you in a very big way. And as we transition into the Q&A, I know we've touched on some of the questions that have already been asked in the chats, I guess, openly. And then I know I had a couple other ones that people reached out to me to make sure I asked. So I'm trying my best to make sure I get them all in, especially I know we have the youngins. So as you all have to start heading off, I want to make sure we get there. But transitioning into the Q&A, I think one of those, just reading backwards, one of the last questions. So when we look at taking action, addressing social issues, like doing the work, it's emotionally, it's mentally draining, taxing. So how do you change your self-care routine, or how do you give yourself some extra space? And then I guess the other side of that is, how do we create safe spaces to do this work? So that was an open question to the whole panel.
I guess I'll start. I mentioned it earlier, but one of those things that I did was setting up my auto reply. Shanae, don't laugh, but that was huge for me. Just saying, listen, everyone, this is insight on like who I am and what I do, because I'm a student, I'm on a board, I'm doing placement, all these other things. And I was just like, this is my reality. And so I need some grace time. One thing for me that I was really bad at, and I'm getting better, is just showing myself more grace. And so being honest with myself about what my reality is and what is my capacity. And so being transparent and communicating that to other people shows them that you're human too. And so with that understanding, and you kind of look at that, it kind of makes you take a step back. Every time I get an auto reply, I'm like, listen, you're not feeling the best. Thank you for communicating that with me. And being on the other end of that, it kind of relieves that pressure, because you don't feel like you have to stop and explain to every person. And so just creating that space and just saying, I might not get back to you right away, but I have a 24-hour window. So just like, be patient with me, sort of thing. I found that really helped me in like a professional sense. And so that's like a huge way that I was able to do that.
The only thing that I can really say to build off that is boundaries. So I try to be really intentional with boundaries. So work is with work and home is with home. And so, when 5 o'clock hits, you're not getting a response from me if it's an email, that's for sure. And only, people that are close to me have my personal number, unless of course it's like a work emergency or things. But yeah, I'm a very busy person. I have participated on many advisory committees. As I said, I'm pursuing my master's degree. I'm also a mother. I also work full time. And then I participate in things like this on the side. So yeah, I really, enforce boundaries and try to mitigate that as best as I possibly can. As long as, even my partner Dorico, he gets mad at me if I'm sitting there writing emails and we're sitting there watching a movie or something like that. So yeah, I'm getting better, I guess, at setting boundaries, but specifically the work phone, like that doesn't come on after 5 o'clock. You're not getting a response and things out of me. And that's just because I'm just caring for myself and making sure that I have that space, because I am so busy and I am so passionate, especially about the work that I'm doing, especially about liberating the Black community. Like that's at top of mind all the time. So it's hard to kind of turn off, especially being a passionate person of that, especially a person that's a product of the issues that I'm trying to alleviate. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. But boundaries is the key word that comes to mind.
I'll weigh in on the boundaries thing. I think that when it comes to dealing with social issues, especially ones that have affected us and our families for so long, I think it's really hard to think about self-care while you're in that position. It's like of passion, of change, of hunger for that change, and just trying to be heard, and all of those things. I haven't necessarily found a way to transition my usual self-care to deal with those issues, because I do get very emotional, because I am a mother, amongst other things, as other people on this panel are parents, and we have children, and we need to make sure that the world is a better place for them. So it's another added pressure being a young person and having young people to raise, and then also trying to fight against these things. It's very traumatic and triggering at times. But the only thing that I would say is those boundaries, like Chanae had mentioned, but creating a boundary and a wall gate around those people who you're fighting with, and making sure that they're behind that barricade too, and that you guys continue to heal and work together. that's what I would say is the best thing for self-care that I've figured out so far.
Yeah, for me, I would say, the first step is that routine. If you basically say, this is my routine, I'm going to stick to it no matter what, then at least you know that you're going to have that time set aside for yourself to do your self-care and whatnot. Also for me too, like mentally, when you're tackling some of the major issues, you basically got to tell yourself, if I'm going to tackle this issue, I'm going to tackle this issue with my all, but also stick with my routine. Because at the end of the day, you're one person, you can only do your part, and you're not 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's an important issue to use. You're even diving in the first place. And it goes back to my point of saying no. Like if you don't think you can provide value or really offer the value the way you can, probably back out and say no. But for me, it's just making sure that that routine is set in stone, and I'm saying to myself, I'm going to stick to that routine, whether I make progress on this issue or not. But while I'm working on this issue, I'm going to make sure I give it my all, but I still got to carve out that time for myself, for self-care. And in terms of how do we create a safe space to do this work, I think we just gotta, from my perspective anyways, we just gotta continue to collaborate. I think about the ACE group that Chanae and I are part of, and it's like, we talk about some, very emotional issues all the time, but the comfort in where it feels like it's a safe space when we're away doing our retreats and we get to celebrate with each other, or we're celebrating the little wins, right? Like there's still tons of problems that need to be solved, but there's gratitude in doing that, fighting with people with similar minds, similar values, and also looking back and saying like, yes, there's big issues that we still need to tackle, but let's look at and reflect on like how much progress we actually made to date. And that's a really hard thing to do when, every day in society, there's something else that's popping up that's emotional and stuff like that. And it's real easy for your mind to go to the negatives, but sometimes we just gotta sit back and reflect the little wins, because even us just having this panel discussion right here is something to celebrate, right? Like it's we're making progress, and we gotta appreciate and kind of pat ourselves on the back when we know we're making progress. And it's real easy to be hard on ourselves because there's still so much work to do, but at the end of the day, all we can do is give it our all and stick to our self-care routines, and hopefully that snowballs to younger generations and the more people and the more change. And that's all we can do. We're not going to be the ones that change everything forever. There's always going to be something that's out of our control. There's always going to be something that we can't do. But we just got to celebrate the little wins and celebrate how much progress we're making, and just reserve that time for ourselves to celebrate those wins and keep our self-care consistent.
Jeez. I know it's time that we're winding off, and I'm gonna pass it in 1 second. I just know that Chevy, Miss Price, you're getting ready to head out. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know we have a few minutes left for our other panelists. One more question I want to make sure I ask, because I will get in trouble if I don't ask this one. But Chevy, thank you so much for joining us. I'll follow with you afterwards.
Thanks for having me. And panelists, you guys are super awesome. I'm super privileged to be on a panel with you guys. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye, girl.
Okay. Quick question, making sure that I get to this, because this is about mental health, but also tied into the networking. Why is it making me scroll so much? Yeah. So for someone who has social anxiety, or anxieties, specifically social anxiety, but for someone who experiences challenges, to going and moving with the same ways that people maybe traditionally say, go network, go meet a lot of people, go into busy places, keep saying yes. That doesn't work for everyone, especially if you're an introvert. And even finding out what your personality is such a journey of itself, right? That awareness piece, as all of you've talked about, is so huge. So I'd love to just ask that as a question. If you're somebody who, is more introverted, if you're someone who has some of these anxieties, or, is not as comfortable in these social settings and situations, it comes back to the things you talked about: confidence, comfort, routines. So what are some ways that you all could recommend that others can build healthy routines and habits, especially if they have anxieties in these spaces, thinking about building their network still?
I'm going to jump right in on that one. As extroverted as I seem to a lot of people, I actually get most of my energy from spending time alone, it's like huge for me. I get very drained. Like I'm an event manager, and when I go home after an event, I'm ready to just block off everything, shut everything down for like 2 days. Like I'm exhausted. And so I definitely would consider myself more of an introvert. When COVID hit last March, I felt a lot of pressure, and I guess anxiety in a sense, because it seemed like everyone else, every other entrepreneur here was just transitioning so easily, and like their businesses were everywhere and this, that, and the other thing, and like Vitamin D Entertainment was just on mute. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I had all these in-person events. Shanae's laughing. I had all these in-person events booked. It was like every day. Sorry, we have to cancel. We have to postpone till 2021. Here we are. It's still canceled. Like all these things. I'm like, man, I didn't know what to do when I was really feeling this pressure, because it seemed like everyone else was doing fine. They just found a way to just go with the flow, and I didn't. And I was like, is this the end? I'm not really sure. And what I did was I actually took that time. It was about like what was it, March to like maybe June almost. And I really took that time to strategize and think, okay, how can I do this? How can I continue to network in a way that works for me? There was a lot of people just going off on social media, and I was like, okay, what can I do that's different? How can I be seen amongst all the noise that's going on social media and things like that? How can I create content? How can I engage people in what's going on while not adding to everything else that's going on? And so I would say just pace yourself. Like just really take that time, test out a couple of things here and there when you're ready, but create something that works for you, because you know yourself better than anyone else is going to. So you know what's a little bit of a stretch for you, and maybe even making goals. You can work your way up to that networking event, but maybe for now it's just, I don't know if you have like a product, doing a giveaway with another organization, another business. That way people follow you and they see what you do, and you don't really have to do anything. Things like that. So these are just like ways that you can figure how do you network without overexerting yourself socially. And so, yeah, just pace yourself and strategize.
Shaq, could I pass that over to you?
Yep. This is a tough question. Because obviously networking is important, but I guess what I would say, we live in a digital era. So, kind of building off what Dena said, like do what's comfortable for you, right? So maybe that would mean, reaching out to folks or networking with folks through LinkedIn or through social media, because you don't have to have that face-to-face interaction. Or maybe your first interaction with this person is through LinkedIn or is through social media. Now you start to build up a rapport. So when you meet this person in person for the first time, you already have some kind of relationship. Your comfortability level might be a little bit better. But yeah, I just say, whatever's comfortable for you, don't push your boundaries too much, and better than anyone else what you're comfortable with. And if that means you're more comfortable reaching out to folks digitally and having a conversation there, we live in an era now where we got access to really anybody that we need on the planet. We can reach out to anybody we want if you're hungry enough, if you're motivated enough. On a day-to-day basis, I'm having conversations with people from Atlanta and Texas and all over the place, and we're meeting each other for the first time, and we're hopping on video, and I get that sense of nervousness because it's like I have no idea what I'm expecting meeting this person. But that doesn't go to say like I can reach out to people through LinkedIn and just write a message and phrase the message how I want, and it takes that pressure and that anxiety of meeting somebody face to face and all that doubt that starts to come in your mind. So I just say do what's comfortable for you, and if needed, utilize this digital era that we're in to your benefit, because in the old days you had the face-to-face conversation with folks, and that's not the case anymore. You can reach out to people on plenty of platforms. So that'd be my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Chanae. Passing it over to you.
Yeah, so I'll keep it a little brief because this question is challenging for me as well. Being somebody who is you know, high energy, always in your face, meeting all new people, it's difficult for me to kind of take a step back and think, you know, how could somebody who doesn't have this type of energy? So my suggestion would be to definitely take advantage of the digital era, as both Shaquille and Dena have both pointed out, because if you're creating content, and even if it's just sharing articles that are important to you, or memes and things that resonate with you, people are going to take notice to the things that you're posting, and people are going to share other things, or they're going to keep coming back to you to see what other content is it that you have that you can put up. So yeah, definitely take advantage of the digital era that we're in, as well as cultivate the relationships that you already have. So everybody has relationships with people. So look in your inner circle to see, you know, what opportunity can they provide me? So utilizing the relationships that you already have to leverage the product or whatever it is that you're trying to put forward. And I think that would go a long way.
Each of you again spoke to all of those different aspects and the different elements, right? The reality that everybody has a way, just like with self-care, just like with, you know, their brand, everybody has to move on their own terms in the same way they navigate these spaces or recharge. So, you know, the big takeaways, we're going to feel the pressure, but you have to do it on your own terms, whether it's building the relationship, finding ways to get comfortable and confident in the conversations. Maybe it's taking more time to craft your message so you can read it over a bunch of times and then send it off and feel good. So it's checked out of the box. But I appreciate all of you, your time and energy. Thank you all for joining us. The questions, I know there was more, so we'll follow up with some of the answers later on. But Shaquille, thank you so much. Chanae, Dena, thank you both so much. And of course, Shevy. But again, you dropped so much knowledge, so much insights. This was recorded. I'm very excited that we're able to bring it into the schools with some of the students as well. But again, thank you for your leadership and all the spaces that you're holding. Thank you for the ways that you continue to move, mix, and lead in the ways you mingle. But again, always setting the standard and holding space for others. So I just really want to thank you from myself and from Infinitus and from the rest of the people here on the digital community. I hope everybody has a great rest of the evening. Bye for now.